Okay, I'd like to welcome everybody to the regular meeting of the Kirkwood Meadows Public Utility District on Friday, July 14th. And I'd like to mention a couple items before we get started. The first is, I think this is the record for the most number of letters used in an agenda. There's a lot we need to cover today. We also have a hard stop at 5 o'clock if we need to go that long. And so we will be asking people, they're speaking to respect the 3-minute limit, and we'll be trying to move as efficiently as possible, but carefully through the agenda. So with that, I'd like to ask Peter to do the roll call.
Certainly. Epstein?
Present.
Schroeder? Absent. Minituranda?
Here.
Burrow?
Here.
Nordberg here. 4 out of 5.
Okay, thank you. And Eric, any announcements?
Just like to welcome everyone to the meeting, and if you're on Zoom, please use the raise your hand function.
Okay, thank you. And next, are there any board members that have a correction to the agenda or want to make any changes to the consent calendar decisions?
Yes, I would like to ask that the current consent for claim and the review of receivable share-off report be pulled out of the consent calendar for itemized review.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other changes? Okay, not hearing any, we'll move those two out. And we'll move on now to item 5, comments from the audience. If anyone would like to speak to the board on an item that is not on the agenda, now would be your opportunity to do so. And if you want to, then please raise your electronic hand or your own personal physical hand. And Eric, I'm not seeing anybody.
And there's none here either in the room.
Okay, then I'm not aware of any written comments in this particular packet. So we'll now move for adoption of the consent calendar items A, B, and C, which are the last 3 minutes, and item F, reauthorizing the AB 361 teleconference meetings. Is there a motion to do so?
Nordberg, so moved.
Okay, second by, okay.
Bertrand.
Okay, so a roll call, please, Peter.
Epstein?
Aye.
Schroeder absent. Minituranda?
Aye.
Burrow?
Aye.
Nordberg, aye.
Okay, thank you. We'll now move on to questions about item 7D, current consent for claims.
Yes, so the question I have is...
Could you tell me what page, Bertrand? Just so
yeah, actually, I'm looking at one of them. There are several of them. So I want clarification on how this thing works. So for example, I'm looking for the page 17. So my first question is, so when this consent for the claim, it's actually prior things being paid, if I understand correctly. Is that correct?
yeah, their invoices paid during the course of the month.
So then the next question is, so I see July gas credit. So if I know we're going to talk about that in the future, lower in the agenda items, but as of now, this thing has expired July 1st, I believe, 2023. And so I just wonder why it's already in the consent of claims. It's actually now, this is not something that is operational, I would say.
You're correct.
Okay. So, yeah, so I think they should not have been added to this consent of claim. And if we do approve them later today, then they could show up in the next month consent of claim. So that was my question on the various acquisitions. So it happened through the thing because many people are eligible to that. Then that's it for, I believe that's all I had for the AP voucher. So I don't know if you want to vote independently on them or vote on the 2 items, or we move to the, what do you want to do, Bob?
Eric, would you rather do them both together or separately?
for the approval.
It doesn't, we approve them as a group normally, so, I mean, if there's. Let's go to the next item, and if
Yeah.
there's a problem with that one where there is not gonna be approved,
Yeah.
then you could do them separate.
So the
Okay.
next item is, I would like to understand a bit better in the shut off section. So we have one account, we have this shut off. I believe I know which one it is. And anyways, this is keep accruing things, and I'd like to have an update on what the district is going to do about this account. Are we going to find a compromise with the customer? And so what is the status on that?
What page are you on, Bertrand?
Page 33.
And this customer particularly, we have sent every form of communication we can possibly try to contact them, and we have not been able to contact them. We've been trying for 3 months now to contact this individual. They are not responding to email, phone, or mail. So they are currently shut off, and they will continue to get.
So
point.
when you mean I can shut off, is it a specific utility account or it's a general KMPUD altogether member account number?
It's a customer,
It's a customer.
yes.
Yeah,
Okay. So that actually assuages me a little bit, actually. So it's okay. And it is a customer that you were able to contact by email in the past, or you have an email address for them.
We have an
They have-
email, a phone, and a physical
Okay,
address,
so you-
no
you-
response to any
No
of the
response to
three.
anything. And it's been going on for how long?
Well, over 90 days.
Yeah, but I see I see $3,000 almost in dues. So it must be many months, no?
and this customer is known to do this.
This customer has done this in the past.
Oh,
They'll pay like $3,000 and
All the
then,
time,
and then disappear.
and then disappear, and then
disappear.
6 months later, pay $3,000.
Okay, so that does actually missing. Okay, it's actually, so I was wondering if it was something else. So that actually clarify. And that's it. That's all I have on these two things, and I'd be happy to move a motion to approve both.
Okay, thank you. Is there a second?
Thornburg, so moved.
Okay, going to do a roll call, please, Peter?
Epstein,
Aye.
Schroeder absent, Minutaranda,
Aye.
Burrow,
Aye.
Thornburg, aye. 4-1.
Okay, thank you very much. I think now we're
It's
ready to
not
move
4
on.
to, it's not 4-1, right? It's not.
4-0.
4-0.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay, sorry.
4-0. Yeah.
Yeah, thanks, Doug.
Right,
Thanks for that
right.
correction. Yep. Okay, everyone's paying attention. I love it. All right, we're ready to move on to item 9A, update on the California Special District Association and the legislation. And I assume we're welcoming Dane Waddle to present. I saw your name up earlier.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Can you everyone hear me okay?
I can hear you fine. Thank you very much for taking the time to meet with us today.
Thank you. Well, thank you for giving me a few minutes. I appreciate it on your busy agenda. I'll go ahead and be quick.
Okay.
For board and staff, Dane Wadley, field coordinator with the California Special Districts Association, CSDA's local liaison to special districts in, well, Alpine, Amador, El Dorado, other areas. Just wanted to touch on a few legislative items. As you know, CSDA is an advocacy association on your behalf in Sacramento and increasingly back in Washington, D.C. And so I have a few items I just wanted to highlight. You have our take action brief here, which admittedly is a little bit out of date, but we'll be getting a new one out here in about a week or so, and I'll get that to staff certainly. So a couple things. Federally, CSDA is, first of all, trying to we're working with our National Special District Coalition to secure a definition of special districts into federal law. There currently is not one. And this was a big problem during COVID when a lot of the money was coming out of the federal government through the CARES Act and ARPA, that special districts were not included to receive a direct allocation through those funding programs. And of course, districts like everyone else had significant impacts related to COVID. So by having a definition of special districts into federal law, excuse me, it'll make it easier for us to, be included for funding opportunities for local governments going forward. So we expect to have some bill language probably next month or so, we're kind of, we have our federal advocacy week coming up in early August, where we're going to be communicating with our federal representatives on this issue and well, other issues as well, but that's going to be kind of our main priority. So the definition of special districts. Secondly, for certainly importance to you guys and other districts in the area, CSDA is trying to get some funding, and this is kind of a longer term project, but trying to get some funding for specifically for water infrastructure for firefighting purposes. And this came out of some recommendations and a tour, actually a couple of tours that we held with some Tahoe area districts up on the North Shore, where, you know, they essentially don't have big enough, the pipes aren't big enough to get fire flows through the pipes to help fight fires. And of course, we all know in the rural areas, fire is a big risk to all of us. And so this is designed, this proposal that we're working on is designed to address that that deficiency, really. So again, kind of a longer term thing, but something that I wanted to at least put on your radar for right now as something that's a priority for us nationally. Statewide, there's two things I just want to mention briefly. The first is Assembly Bill 557. This is CSDA's sponsored legislation this year, and essentially it extends the AB 361 authority past this year, and so into 2024 and beyond. As you may recall, AB 361, which I know you just see you had the authority on your earlier agenda. That authority ends at the end of this year, and 557 would continue it going forward in the event of a statewide declared emergency to hold, to be able to do meetings virtually, all virtually, and expedite any sort of actions that need to be taken. So that bill is moving through the process. We're, obviously, it's not a done deal yet, but we're cautiously optimistic that we can get that bill to the finish line and maintain that flexibility and authority for districts going forward. Last thing I'll mention is this is a little bit different in terms of the advocacy side, but there is a ballot initiative that has qualified for the November of 2024 ballot. So admittedly, it's a little ways off. But it's a really big issue, and so hence our advocacy now. It's called the California Business Roundtable Initiative. It's the Taxpayer Protection and Government Accountability Act, which certainly sounds very good. But there are some provisions in there that will essentially make it more difficult for districts and all local agencies really to adopt to raise or increase fees, special taxes, assessments. It does that by changing the definition of what your costs or what your fees must be based off of. And that definition is that it must be the minimum amount necessary to provide the service, which not only as I think can be considered subjective, because what's minimum to one person may not be minimum to another. But it also too goes into question things like, well, okay, is the money that you're putting aside today for a capital project 3-4 years down the road, is that the minimum amount necessary to provide, your services to the Kirkwood community? I mean, again, getting back to that subjectivity, it could be argued different ways. So it's certainly a concern to us. CSDA is opposed to the initiative. We have about 100 districts that have adopted formal opposed resolutions. The second provision of this initiative, which is quite concerning, is that the proponents were originally trying to qualify this for November of 2022. So last year's ballot, right? And the proponents failed. They were not able to get the signatures in time, but there's still language in the initiative now that was approved that says that any fee, special tax assessment that was adopted post January 1 of 2022, that is not in compliance with the initiative's language, which is essentially all of them, would essentially be voided, and the district or local agency would have to go back out within 12 months to get approval by their community for that, whatever that fee, assessment, or tax was. So that's going to be pretty significant for all local agencies who may have to comply with that post November of 2024, the initiative passes. And so those are just a couple of the reasons why we're opposed to this. And again, it's, as I said, it's a little ways off, but it's something we're trying to put on our district's radars now as something that will be very important as we go into the fall of this year and certainly next year in our legislative advocacy efforts on your behalf. So certainly more information there, and we'll be following up with staff with some additional information on our latest update, as I said. And appreciate the time and happy to answer any questions if there are any right now, and we're certainly offline.
Okay. Thank you, Dane. Are there any questions by the board or the audience?
Doesn't appear to be.
Okay.
So
Oh, yeah. Go for it.
maybe I'd like to ask a question. So one of the thing I was reading is basically the concern about the zero emission vehicles for public agencies.
Yes.
And so can you resume what's the position of CSDA? Well, sorry, CSDA, yeah. On
Yes, right. Yes. So we were certainly concerned about the regulations that were basically enacted by the California Air Resources Board. We were part of a coalition that were expressing concerns about that for a couple of reasons. One, with the availability of these vehicles, right, in terms of the marketplace, and then secondly, the concerns that we have about I think just the reliability, and I think particularly with you guys, case in point, up in the high country with zero emission vehicles trying to get through snow or do some sort of repair in the winter months presents a challenge, to say the least, with a zero emission vehicle. So it's
can you clarify if this is just for trucks and pickups, or that also applied to front loader and things like that?
It's so medium and heavy duty vehicles.
So my question, do you think front loader are exempt or they are included?
That's a good question. I'd have to check on that. I don't want to speak out of turn. There were some exemptions for like emergency vehicles.
Hey, Dane, I sat on Aqua's subcommittee on this, and it does not yet apply to off-road equipment at this time, but there's discussion about that separate. But this particular rulemaking that CARB did does not apply to those vehicles.
Okay.
Yet.
Thank you.
Okay. Dane, thank you very much for your time today, and we will follow up on some of how we can assist with some of these items with you.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Okay. Thank you very much. Okay. We'll move on to item now 9B, finances, and Tommy, we'll scan ahead to your page.
I appreciate it.
Okay.
So the finance committee really wanted me to break out and continue to break out throughout this next fiscal year the other revenue. That's been a constant question that seems to arise. So I broke it out clearly on this top section, top little paragraph. But just going over the income statement to begin with, looking at the combined income statement at this point, like we said, we're looking at year-end stuff at this point. So year-end combined budget, we are better $460,000, which is fantastic. Look at the fire department; they are negative, unfortunately, $288,000. But kind of looking at it by breaking it down by fund, the water department is better than budget by $159,000. Wastewater is better by $221,000. The employee housing, I would remind everyone that we still need to decide what to do with the money that was made off of the sale of the Meadows unit. So that's going to kind of skew that number. But the electric fund is better than budget by $392,000. Snow removal, we still haven't got the invoice for the McLean yet. So right now we're only worse than budget by $55,000. And we're reaching out to a few of our vendors. We have some invoices that we keep trying to get from them, but we haven't gotten yet. So as that number firms up, I'll let you know and keep you posted, but that's what it is with current invoices.
Do you have any anticipation as far as what's going to end up to be?
Until I have firm numbers, I don't want to speak out of turn.
Yeah, what I can tell you, we do have outstanding is multiple trips down to Schaefer, the towing company, and Snowquip. Those are the biggest three that we have that we should have had invoices for a month ago.
Okay.
So, and we've been asking them for them, so.
Yes. Yeah, I'd love to get firm numbers. And our accounts payable Brittany has really been pushing them hard too. So as soon as we can get them, I will put them in, I swear. But
the reason I'm asking is that I really understand that we need to wait to have the invoices to get the final number, but let's do an hypothetical 100K at the end being over budget, sorry. So I just wonder how it reconciles. Basically, we increase almost by 300K the budget for snow removal. So I'm just wonder what the justification if this year we only were worse, let's say by 100K. So,
well, the McLean is going to be 200,000 in that itself, which obviously will break out over a certain amount of time frame.
Okay, we'll have this discussion when we get this final number, but it does ask questions. Yeah.
I guess the question I have is, on the fire department negative of 288, what's that? How was that spent? Is that for standby?
It's everything that's related to fire, from measurie to uniforms to stipends.
How much?
This isn't 501c3. This is purely,
no.
as Eric pointed out.
Yeah, and the typical budget was 160K.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we are 288 above the 160K.
No, that 160 is nestled within that.
Correct.
Okay.
That's the actual.
This
is actually where this is where the fund. Fire always goes negative. Employee housing always goes negative.
Yeah.
G&A always goes negative until we get the property taxes shoved in.
So we are only 120 worse than we were anticipating.
No, because we budgeted for a bigger last year. We actually budgeted for more operational costs.
Okay.
So.
And we can go to any of these in detail, obviously, but propane is 77,000 better than budget.
Well, actually, I have a question on propane because I was surprised by the number that you had this month, and I wanted to know if you could explain why we have such discrepancies. I mean, that's if I try to get there. Propane is page.
It was a timing. It was a timing of an invoice and less usage when the invoice came. It was just when we got our invoices from Kiva.
Because for commercial, we are exceeding revenue by 175%. So what's going on?
What page, Bertrand?
What page?
So 59.
One more. There it is.
So what was your question, Bertrand?
So commercial, we in May, we had 94,000 revenue, income, and that's 175% more. So why do we have so much more propane consumption by commercial in May?
You had to ask Vail on why they're using more.
You don't know why people use, we just know they use.
We just know the true numbers of what was used.
Yeah, it's really buzzing. I mean, why do we have such a variance 175% in May? So it is an actual consumption that did occur.
Yes.
Correct. This is actual build numbers.
And they must have turned the snow melt on and forget about it.
Yeah, or they're doing cleaning at one of their places and keeping the heat on. I don't know. I appreciate it. I mean,
we're not here to speculate, Tommy.
I do not actually, if it's a waste, because the planet doesn't need that. But that's a different topic.
Let's keep moving, Cam. Okay.
Anything else specifically on any of the income statements?
Nope.
So if you want to scroll down, Eric.
Tommy, just one question. Have we
Yep,
made our
please.
final filing with RUS?
We did do the
Sure.
filing. Yeah, we did the filing. That was due back in April for
Uh-huh.
Form 7 and Form 12.
Okay. Thank you.
Oh, my pleasure. Yeah, Terry really jumped in on that and she really helped out a lot. So team's really coming together.
Good.
Is this where you wanted to be? Cash flow?
If anyone had any questions about cash flow.
We did
Just
pay off-
that-
We did pay off USDA, so principal and interest,
Mhm.
but we actually paid off one loan in its entirety as
Yeah,
budgeted.
which is fantastic. 370,000.
You skipped over the June preliminaries.
Oh,
You
sorry.
could just
Oh, there
comment
we
on
go.
on those
Yep.
for a second. Yeah, thank you.
Please.
Did we went through the cash flow already or not?
No, I was
that's
just
after.
doing it. I was
I
just
thought
doing
Doing
it
it in
with-
order.
Sorry, yep, go
I
ahead.
had a
Preliminary
question on
income
preliminary.
Yep.
What was your question, Bob?
No, I just wanted to see it
Oh, okay.
and see if
gotcha.
there's any questions on it.
Yeah, again, you note that commercial is again using more than budget.
Yeah, but not double.
Okay, yeah, thanks. Why don't we move on to cash flow then?
Any other questions about cash flow?
Well, my
Right.
question here, we end up at 3367. That was prior the RUS loan payment? Oh,
So actual cash that we have in hand is 3.5. After we paid off that.
so, I mean, it's great to have such cash, but
Mhm.
I mean, usually we have more, we are fluctuating between 1 and 2, and here we fluctuate between 2 and 3 plus.
Budget is 2.6 for
Yeah,
this time frame. So yeah, we're up 884,625. 265.
yes. Correct.
Well, we always go down in
Yes.
December, so
Mhm.
Correct. So it's nice to have a little bit of cushion going into that.
Yeah, so again, my question was, that is after we paid the RUS loan, that the big payment that we just made.
Again, yes.
Okay.
no, the RUS loan, did it clear in May or it cleared in June?
Yeah, but this is June. You
Yeah,
have
no,
numbers
this
to
is, no,
June.
this is May.
No, I'm sorry. Yes, I
Oh,
apologize.
so
It's on.
it's not showing up here.
Eric
It
is
clears in the
correct.
Following month. So when we have June numbers, you'll see it drop it about
That does make
680,000.
That's make much more sense.
Yes, I apologize. Completely correct.
Any other questions? Move
That's
on.
it for the cash flow.
Okay, any other questions from the board on finances or from the audience? Not seeing any. Let's move on to item 9C, the annual investment policy review.
We have to annually do this per our investment policy. Finance committee recommends approval. It's the same thing it's been since we implemented it.
Okay, and Doug, do you have any comments from the finance committee?
Green on the errors.
No, no further comments on this.
Okay,
We flipped the breaker.
okay, are there any questions on the board? Otherwise, motion to approve.
We found.
So moved, Dornbrook.
Okay, moved by Peter, a second.
Second,
Okay, Doug seconds. So vote please, Peter.
Epstein,
Aye.
Schroeder absent. Nitaranda,
aye.
Rowe,
Aye.
Dornbrook, aye.
Okay, so the board's approved the annual investment policy review. We'll move on to item 9D, an update on our annual schedule of fees.
Sure, again, it's something we do every year. There's for miscellaneous fees, there was a new addition. One of our operators is getting qualified to do backflow prevention testing, cross control protection. And so talking with him, how much time it would take. These are the fees that we would offer to do that if we had staff available to our customers. But it will save the district money having them certified because we will be able to do our own without having to pay Summit or Jackrabbit. And then we have not updated our copy charges in 10 years. So we looked at our bills from our copy company, and this is what our actual costs incurred are.
Out of curiosity, how many such requests do you get typically?
For reproduction,
Yeah,
as of now, no one has ever paid for reproduction since I've been here.
yeah. So because there was no request, it was not charged.
There was we have not produced any documents.
Yeah. Yeah,
Um,
so 0 time.
And that was it for miscellaneous fees. Those are the only changes. There it goes. We did flip a breaker. Okay, good thing we're the electric company. And then on the connection fees, so we actually have the CPI that we use. The numbers were released in mid-June, so we actually have that applied. It's about 4.5%. And then except for those, all the rest of these costs are our actual costs to the district for these materials, what we pay. So that's what the increase is. They're not being increased by CPI outside of the connection fees. They're being increased by what we're being charged.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
On the meeting room use,
Which one? Oh, you're going back to
that's
the other.
page 69.
Yes.
And so we've charged $50 for local non-governmental agencies of use of the room. My question is going to be, does that include the ability to receive phone call? We used to have actually a phone system that people could call in for people when they do have meetings. Is this?
We do have those speaker phones. They're
Yes.
still here.
Could
Yes.
that be,
Someone
could
could
that
use
be
those.
included in that fees? Yes.
It already is.
Yes.
It's
Okay.
already included. Yeah.
So just because I think people might be interested to have that. So maybe in your form, you should have a checkbox saying, do you
want
need
phone?
a speaker phone and
That's a
check
good
in,
point.
so that reduces the burden for the district?
That's a good point. Yeah. Tommy, make a note of that, please.
Yeah.
That's a good point.
Noted.
Anything else on these?
Doug, any comments from finance recommendation?
No, we reviewed and discussed these and recommend them as written here.
Okay, is there any additional questions? If not, is there entertain a motion to approve?
So moved.
Okay, Doug moves. A second, please.
Norbert, second.
Okay, all right. Why don't we do the roll call then, Peter?
Epstein,
Aye.
Schroeder absent. Gitaranda,
Aye.
Rowe,
Aye.
Norbert, aye.
Okay, that's complete. We'll move on to item 9E, the annual source of confusion. Randy,
Yeah.
You will notice,
I
you will
so much
notice, Bob.
appreciate it.
Bob, you will notice that we included an FAQ.
I
And
know.
Randy and I have a wager whether one of these questions will be asked invariably. And I owe her lunch if a certain one is.
Randy, I just want to tell you, Brian, how much I appreciate the fact that you added this in. So go ahead. Please.
Absolutely. No problem. And because it is every year, it's a hard set of forms to look at and it's confusing. So like you said, this is annual. These are the forms that we're required to submit to the CEC, and we also are required to post them on the website. So really the one that gets the most attention is Schedule 3, which is the power content label. And as you can see, and as is generally the case, our power comes from other, which is diesel at the powerhouse, and unspecified sources. I tried to put some detail in the frequently asked questions, but I'd be happy to answer any questions the board or anyone has on this.
Yeah, Eric, do you want to just show the form? So
Not really.
uh,
It's just going to lead to confusion, but all right.
you just went past it.
The third of these forms, I think, is the one that
This
There
is
we
the one this is the one customers will see that we have to document to them.
I kind of want to make sure Brandy gets a free lunch, so I want to ask a question.
Okay.
And this might be related to, I'm trying to remember the last time we did this. This is my second time looking through this. So the number of megawatt hours retired versus the sales is different because of the timing of like a fiscal year versus a calendar year. Am I remembering that correctly?
Usually correct. So our RECs were purchased by compliance period. And so there was sometimes a lag. We have, since we went 100% renewable in 21, we've contracted with Shell to get annual purchases in, but those are annual purchases that lag by a year. So at the time you see this, you're looking at a year and a half ago's purchases that offset this power. So that's why there is a discrepancy.
Maybe add it to the FAQ next time.
Next time. Got it.
So I'm sure I'll forget if I look at this again.
I forgot the rules. Did Brandy just lose lunch?
No, that was not the question.
That was not the question, but I
all right,
appreciate the help there.
Okay.
All right, well, I can ask another question later to make sure that happens.
Okay.
I can text you the question, but I lose, Doug.
All right.
Yeah, so
Are
let's restate one more time so people are assuaged on that we are indeed using 100% renewable energy in KMPUD nowadays, and that's even the label is just showing how it is proceed, but we are 100% renewable.
Correct. So that's the first of the frequently asked questions. So the physical power that comes to us is unspecified power that we buy off the grid for the most part, but we buy renewable energy credits, which are the green attributes separated from power, and we offset 100% of our sales. So yes, it is 100% renewable energy that is accounted for in our system sales.
We have one hand raised, Bob.
And
Okay.
that's including for our losses as well, because this is it's not the metered, it's actually what we purchase.
We base our purchases off of retail sales, which include sales to ourselves. But I'm sorry.
So that's a problem actually. So because you are using about 15% more, and what you are saying is you are not purchasing a REC for the 15% loss that we have.
We are offsetting 100% of our retail sales, not including line losses.
Should that something we should discuss? I mean, not necessarily at this stage, but I just wonder how is it, because Shell is actually billing us. Shell is billing us losses. So I would assume that they would issue the number of REC necessary linked to our purchase, not ourselves.
That's a separate contract with Shell that we procured based on the last rate study. We estimate our sales every year. We gave that to Shell. They committed to that much. And then at the end of each compliance period, if we have true ups that we need to purchase more, yes, we do that. So certainly something the board could come back and take a look at if we wanted to consider.
What I would suggest here is for planning committee to look at that and think of our finance committee. I think it's more a planning committee here that to decide if it's correct that we only buy renewable on our sales, not on our purchase, and decide if we wanted to change our policy or not.
Bertrand, I'll make a note of that and make sure we follow up.
Thank you.
Okay, Chris Tucker has a question, I believe. Chris, go ahead and unmute.
I'm sorry, that was a mistake. No question. Thank you. I'm listening with interest.
Okay, well, that's nice to hear from you. Okay, are there any other questions for Brandy before she has lunch? Okay, not hearing any. We need to officially approve. So the motion to approve the power disclosure by the board.
So moved.
I move.
Okay, I'm going to call Doug first.
Fine. Yeah.
Okay,
so I'll be second.
And Bertrand seconds. Okay, great. All right, roll call, please, Peter.
Epstein,
Aye.
Schroeder absent. Linda Tarunda,
Aye.
Rowe,
Aye.
Thornburg, aye.
Okay, 4-0. We'll move on now to item 9F, the employee temporary gas stipend, which is up for renewal consideration.
Yes, Finance Committee reviewed this and recommends renewing it for another year, but changing the word gas to travel stipend.
And the reasons for that being that electric vehicles and having to think about this more broadly than gasoline.
Plus, they could have a diesel engine.
Or I don't know.
Or
Biodiesel. you know,
hydrogen, yeah.
yeah,
Okay,
hydrogen.
good.
Mm.
Is there any discussion on this topic?
Yeah, actually, I'm not convinced we should have such a program. It's actually not the way we should subsidize people driving emission-free things, not gasoline. So I just want, if there is a cost of living issue, that should be addressed through regular mean, which is compensation. And I'm just not comfortable. We keep rolling this thing forever. I mean, first, it's very arbitrary in the numbers. If it's 4 or 5 or 6 or 8 in the future, it just doesn't make sense. So I'm against the principle and philosophy of that gas stipend. And I think if there is a cost of living issue for our employees, that should be handled through the regular payroll, not a specific gas stipend. So I'm not in favor of such a program.
Okay, thanks. Other comments from the board?
Well, I disagree with that completely.
Go ahead, Peter.
It's hard enough to staff the district. In Valley housing is so expensive and limited. This helps motivate and make it easier to hire people in the future. I think we should continue it, and I'm going to move that we do.
Okay.
Well, I would answer to that you actually discourage people to live in the valley by doing that. So
How can you say that?
because you pay people, you compensate for the cost of transportation. So people who are in the valley don't have access to that.
Okay.
And so the people who live in the valley, they have actually a housing credit for that to help them face the high cost of living. And by giving money for people who are driving you basically encourage that instead of encouraging people to live in the valley. So
Okay.
I think it doesn't make this policy are contradicting themselves actually.
All right. I hear you, but there's a motion put on the floor by Peter. Is there a second?
I think there's some audience that want to speak as well.
Proper protocols
Yeah.
is there's a second, then discussion. If there's no second, then we'll go back to where we were before.
Right.
Little decorum would be good. So if there's no second, it dies for luck. Okay. There you
I'll
go.
second
Now
it.
it's discussion.
Okay. It's been moved and seconded, and then so we'll continue the discussion.
We have one in-person comment from Howard.
Okay. Go ahead, Howard.
Yeah, I personally am totally opposed to this. I mean, gas prices are the new normal. And I don't think you should do anything to subsidize people to live out of the valley. I think the district should be doing whatever it can to make it more affordable in the valley. And that would be start with lowering the electric rates. And so along those lines, if you want to help people commute here, I would say put in EV chargers for the employees and encourage them to get electric vehicles and let them drive here electrically. And we have plenty of electricity to sell. And at 24 cents a kilowatt hour, it's a lot cheaper than gasoline or diesel.
Okay. Thank you. I would just add in my own view on this is the employees already live where they live. There's been a large increase, and we've been trying to accommodate that and keep the employees, solvent. So I certainly believe that starting this was good and continuing it for another time period makes sense to me.
Yeah, I'd also like to say I don't disagree with Bertrand and Howard's points in theory, but I think in practice where we are is I'm more side with what Bob's saying, is that there is a reality of where people are today, and we have those staff that we're trying to support. And I think it is important to say that this is a temporary gas stipend, and I think we should think about our longer term plans with this. And I'd also say, just in general, Bertrand, when you're saying that it should be in compensation, I mean, salary and benefits, this is not uncommon to have a benefit. I mean, this would be, I would consider it a benefit, and that's not uncommon. I don't know that I want to continue to have this forever, but I don't think that this is egregious in terms of some sort of policy to have in terms of how people can be compensated and incentivized to join a staff at an employer. So those are my current thoughts on it.
And Flora has her hand up, Bob.
Sam Fleur. I agree that I feel like this discourages people from living in Valley because it's providing them reimbursement for the travel time to come here, and it is less expensive in some of the areas around here to live. And we do have a lot of the issues that we have seen have arisen because employees are not living in Valley anymore. And that I feel the district should really be doing as much as they can to incentivize people living in Valley versus incentivize people living out of the Valley. And I would ask Doug, you say it's not something we want to be doing forever, but the price of gas is not going down. So I'd be curious to see and understand kind of long-term. Gas is expensive. It's expensive all over the place. What long-term ideas are there if this is intended as a temporary fix? Because I don't see the price of gas going down.
Right. I mean, I agree with you. And I'd say, we can put in EV charging and we can make that free for employees like Howard suggested. I think that's one thing that you could do. We could further subsidize housing. We could do increased compensation. I mean, there are lots of things that we can do in a longer term planning process and a budgeting process. Not all of those are things that I think we can do immediately today. And so I think for the people who are living where they're living and we are trying to support them, I'm okay with this as a short-term continuation. But I think one of the things that we have to think through, I'm sorry, is there a comment? Howard or Bertrand?
We can't hear anything that's going on because Eric wants this air conditioning on.
Sit over here. Awesome. It's over here.
Yeah, just change it.
Cooler and you can hear better.
We're having a hard time hearing the people on the screen.
You're also sitting as far away from a microphone as possible, just to be clear. So it's not the air conditioner.
So what I'm hearing here is clearly we need to, at the minimum, if we are going to extend that thing, we should also commit before the next extension to actually study the subject and see what we can do in a wise and consistent manner, because it looked really like here it's going to look, I mean, I just wonder when the gasoline is going to be $2 again. I mean, my guess is not better than yours, but it looks like this is on for a long time. So I think I really like to tie this thing at the minimum to maybe at planning or finance, I don't know, one of them, to actually study this topic and see what we can do on this issue and how we can incentivize people to live in the valley or have electrical vehicle or things like that. So just sending money, I understand this is the reality of today, but here there is nothing to link that to actually trying to improve that situation. And it is not consistent with what we try to do and for delivering the best service at the PUD. I mean, the utilities will be, community will be better served with more people being able to live in the valley.
Okay, I'd like to keep this to the subject at hand, which is the temporary gas stipend, and see if we can call for a vote.
I wanted to say something.
There's another hand up, Jay.
I just would hope that the board would not vote for this. I don't think this is a good thing for the district or its employees. And I don't think that it will help us retain employees. I think the best thing that we can do here is have people incentivized to live in Valley and not off the hill where they can get snowed out. Doesn't make any sense.
How can this hurt? How does this hurt employees? This is helping them try to sustain their current quality of life to get here and continue to be here. If we're taking money away from them and saying we don't value them to be able to come in here and live where they currently live, how is that not helping them? How is that not encouraging them to continue to be employed here? I don't understand that comment.
Living here helps you understand what's going on here. You don't live here, you don't understand what's going on here.
I'd like to keep this focused on this
understand that, I'm sorry.
specific issue, so I'd like to call for a vote, please.
Can I answer Doug's question?
I'd like to call for a vote, please.
I haven't used my 3 minutes, Bob.
Or did I?
My comment is very quick and just a suggestion that Vail does provide gas money to employees if they carpool, and that is something I'd like, if we're going to have a program like this, that should be considered. Because this is.
Or bus service.
Thank you.
I think that we should listen to what the audience has to say. People are making the effort to come.
Are there any other comments?
Yes.
Okay, Doug, you asked the question. The answer is you're paying people $720 extra to live out of the valley. I don't see how you don't understand the impact of that. You're getting $720 if you commute in, and it's excluded from the people that live here.
Where can you rent a
That's
place
very
for
simple
$720?
Howard, I'm not questioning.
Where can you rent housing?
$720 times 12 is $720.
Where can you rent housing?
I don't care. It's a $60 a month.
Our biggest
difference.
challenge is staffing.
Well, then let's.
Our
deal with
biggest
that.
challenge is staffing. I can't say that enough.
I don't understand.
Why
Well, it's
subsidize
real.
people
It's
to be out
real.
of the valley?
Not real.
It used to be easy, so there's something going on. Anyway, different topic here.
Real estate values have gone through the roof. There's.
No,
if
we
you're- if you're
offer
a single person, You
housing.
can live in a log
We
rock.
offer housing. This gas stipend is actually for people not living in the valley specifically. Yeah. So anyway, I think it's a wrong move. At the minimum, I want for district or committees to look at that. What can we do for the long term? I understand that we want to offer living condition to our employees. I totally support that. But this gas stipend is the wrong way to achieve that.
Okay,
And Bertrand, I don't disagree with you in terms of I want to have a longer term plan to this, but I think the reality is right now it helps
Well,
support people to be able to get here. So I will
So
happily
this
join
case-
you in agreeing that we should have a longer term plan for this. And
So
I look forward to
Taib,
having that conversation on it. But for right
Yeah.
now, I do think it makes sense to continue to support our staff to be able to get here, given that it's hard to just pick up and move. They can't just move here. And,
well,
you know,
I think we should tie it to making progress on that before the next time we come for renewal, because last time
I'm
we
fine
done
with that.
nothing.
I'm fine with that.
Build
I'm
some
fine with
employee
that.
housing?
Yeah.
You're gonna build some more employee housing? You're gonna make Tri-Tech enforce unrestricted housing? Which they haven't
can
done.
we,
Smug. Whoa, wait,
What
what
did
did
you just say?
I said smug. That's what I said.
Yeah, so you got something to say about
Absolutely.
it. Okay, I'm smart.
Yes.
Okay, I can't wait to see.
Can't wait to
can
what?
we, can we
Can't wait
please?
to what? That sounded vaguely threatening, Jay. Can't wait to what?
Very
You just called
unprofessional.
me smug. That's not.
Because you're being a
to me.
smartass in the middle of the meeting, being
Can we-
disrespectful to the members of the audience and the board. Yes.
You are being
I don't feel
disrespectful as well,
disrespected.
Eric,
By calling
Yeah.
someone out on their behavior? Yeah.
Why don't we just vote? Why don't we just vote?
professionally.
Why don't we just vote?
I would like to,
Where we stand.
Everybody stands as,
So let's just
Well,
vote.
as again,
can we
I would
please,
like this to have been.
How about proposing an
I do
amendment
have a
that
gavel. Can we
$60
please-
yeah, that's how you
This
treat
is
your.
gonna last
please
for
ask
1
the
year.
audience to be quiet?
Who said that? We
Yeah,
just
that's
did
what
the
I
same thing.
Come up with
So just say it.
2
It's going to expire at the end of 24, at July
Right.
24. You said that.
Here,
It's not saying that at all.
give everybody 60 a month. Don't exclude the people that live here then.
Because when they go shopping, they have to drive.
Give people 60.
What planet are you guys living on?
Can we
What planet are
please,
you living on?
No,
You know how hard
please.
it is to hire people? I said, give everybody.
It's
50
not
a
hard to
month.
hire people.
Instead
Yes,
of-
it is.
I-
Our biggest
I suggested an
challenge.
Amendment, make it
It's
60
always
for
been our
everybody.
biggest
I support
Can I,
one
can I please,
suggestion.
can I please ask for decorum? This expires on July 1st of 2024. There's been a motion and seconded. Can I please call for a vote?
Epstein,
Aye.
Schroeder, absent. Minutes Aranda,
Aye.
Perot,
No,
Dornbrook, aye. Passes 3-1.
Okay, thank you. We're moving on to item 9G, performance reporting and aquifer levels.
We have performance reporting in the packet through May. June numbers are not available as of yet. With the late snow melt, we are still tracking down some meters that have not been readable through the winter. So we did not want to give numbers that were not completely accurate to close the year. I would say if you guys could just take a look at the packet, that would be great. The aquifer level sheet is in there as well. You'll see slightly lower than normal aquifer levels. We are seeing a recharge in our aquifer levels. We had a large water leak that has been found and shut off at a residence. That is also affecting the aquifer levels. We expect that to continue to come up. I'll answer any questions anybody wants to ask on performance reporting.
Okay, are there any questions for Brandy?
uh,
I'm sorry.
so I'm lost. So did we already went through the electrical generation, stuff like that?
I included it in the packet. If you have
Yeah.
any specific questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Yeah, no, actually, I want to discuss our losses. I think we are just not working hard enough to identify our losses. And the 12% goal is an arbitrary thing we've done empirically because this is what we have basically. Once you subtract the non-losses, but in the end, we have 15.5% losses altogether. And I think the district need to spend more energy, time, and maybe money to actually reduce these losses. And so that's what I wanted to say. On the propane, I'm happy to see that temperature change probably adjusted the number for us. And it was right not to be worrying about the propane number during the winter. And that's what I have to say, yes.
Thank you for your comment.
But
Are there any other-
again, I would like the district to be more proactive in understanding and reducing our losses.
Are there other questions for Brandy? Okay, any questions from the audience? I'm not seeing any. Okay, then let's move on to the next item, the meter shed status, item 9H.
Thank you. So on this one also, we've included here in the packet our meter status. These are coming along. There have actually been 2 more residential meters that have been accepted as complete since this was published earlier this week. As you can see, 2 people have submitted a plan to the general manager, and that's been approved. So their deadline has been moved out till September. We are 75% complete. Of the ones that are in the May and June timeline, 1 of those is shut off. 2 of them are expected to be shut off next week. They were trying to get construction complete, but have not completed that and do not have a plan in place to do that. And the other has been signed off on. As of today, commercial, we have nothing upcoming in commercial until November. Those are also in progress. We met on one of them today. So we're continuing to make progress on there. I would like to say that staff is very happy that we did not have any issues this winter with with utility meter side propane leaks. So this is a program that has been hard for staff to deal with, hard for the community to come to terms with and to find contractors. But we are very, very happy that we are moving towards completion here. So any questions on this, I'd be happy to answer those as well.
Brandy, these are both propane and electric meters?
Correct.
Yes.
They are all together.
Yeah. Are there questions for Brandy?
Brandy, I have a question for you. I've noticed multiple of the electric meter base covers, the design has failed. Is there any plan for addressing the failed covers and their location and maybe eliminating the need for the cover? Because some of these meters have sat there for 40+ years with no issue, and then KMPUD's design was built on top of it when the design has failed. So is there any plan to do something about it?
Our staff will be evaluating meters as we see problems. I've also noticed a couple of electric sheds that have failed and seeing if we can't get to the bottom of why that failed. Potentially a moving of the meter might be appropriate in some of these locations. So we will get to any that we see failures. And if you have a list, please forward those to us. We'll make sure we get them on our inspection list.
Any other questions?
Yeah, I'm just not a question, but I noticed that as well. And that actually probably created more danger than helping, because sometimes meters that protrude very lightly, only a few inches, are often out of the snow load, depending on where the snow is, because the house is actually melting the touching snow, and they were actually more exposed to the snow load through the failed cover. So it was really not an improvement, in my opinion, for some of the situations, not all. So I really hope that the district is going to look at that and fix this issue.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions before we move on? Okay, then we're ready to move on. Thank you very much, Brandy. We'll move on to 9I, the wastewater treatment plant repair and rehabilitation project, and the great news of a notice of award.
Yeah, so the district received 2 bids, which were reviewed by the engineer. They were both responsive and responsible bids with no discrepancies. We did exercise the bid deductive item because it exceeded the funds available. And so finance committee, or sorry, operations and staff and the engineer recommend we award to KG Walters, and that the general manager be authorized to issue notice to proceed once all the documents are provided and USDA concurs.
Okay, and Peter, do you want to comment? This was reviewed in operations.
We agreed that we should proceed with the signing of the contracts. Everything seemed to be appropriate, and I didn't see any red flags.
All right, and also I would add to that the item that was eliminated, putting that aside, the other things, most of them, or almost all of them, can be done, are indoors, so we can proceed and make progress even after the snow starts to fall if the contractor is available. So being expedient on this will be helpful. Are there questions from the board?
Yeah, I have a question.
Bertrand?
Yes, I have a question, which is, so the limit was 6 million for the project, and what was the scope of the project? Was including an equalization storage tank or not?
Yes, the original scope included the tank.
Yeah. So the only reason we actually within our limit is because we are eliminating the equalization tank.
Yes.
Fortunately.
Yes and no, because I think there are other ways to handle that. Yeah, okay.
And that can be added at a later date.
Well, I think I should be worked on. That'd be a much more cost-effective way to deal with that.
But when you get a rain on snow event like we did in 1976, we had to close the valve. We need more, we need more emergency storage if we can get it. Really do. I'm not saying that's the only solution, but we have,
Yeah, it seems an expensive solution. I'm sure we can talk more about it once, actually, I think Howard has things to say at that topic. Yes, I'm done.
Okay, thank you. Are there other questions from the board? Okay, questions from the audience?
Howard has his hand up, Bob.
Okay, Howard?
Well, first of all, I'd like to congratulate the staff on getting this done. I know that been on a lot of people's minds that work needed to be done there to improve the reliability. So I think this is great news. I think it's also great news that we didn't get the equalization tank. I think spending $1.4 million on a stainless steel tank would be the most frivolous waste of the district's funds that I could even imagine. I don't care, rain on snow, we should have the tightest sewer system possible, and then we won't care about rain on snow. It's possible to do it. For $1.4 million, we could be doing major line replacements, which may be needed. We could be inspecting the laterals. There may be individual laterals that need to be replaced, and those would be on the homeowner. So I think that for $1.4 million, we could have a really tight system and never need that tank.
well, you're optimistic. More optimistic than I am.
I have 35 years of engineering experience to back that up.
I've got 45 years of experience here in Berkeley.
Yeah, but
Okay,
I've had to go door to door to ask people to leave the valley because we had rain on snow event. So we can argue that over a beer somewhere.
Okay.
okay, Howard, thank you very much for your comments. Are there other comments from the audience?
From the audience. So I would like to add that I think we made a lot of progress initially on this INI, but it looks like these last few years, because of time and money and resource and staff availability, that we have not keep the same pace. And I think that need to be prioritized again. That'd be my comment.
Okay, but focusing on the wastewater.
We got 2 months to do it.
Yeah.
Let's stay focused on this specific issue. Is there are we ready to proceed? Is there a motion to award this and authorize the general manager to issue a notice to proceed?
Yes, I would move that we sign the contract and proceed.
Okay, thank you. That was Peter. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, second by Doug. All right, is there any additional comments from the board or audience? Oh, I do want to echo Howard's comments that it is so great to have this there and be able to get started. So I'm very grateful. There's no additional comments. Peter, can we have a roll call, please?
Epstein,
Aye.
Schroeder absent, Mitterranda,
Aye.
Burrow,
Aye.
Overguy.
Okay, thank you very much. We'll now move on to item 9J, propane master plan. And the focus here is on the intended scope of what the master plan would be doing, and that's on page 138. I thought we might have this problem.
Yeah, I don't have Adobe Pro on this laptop. It goes
Yeah,
much-
okay, 138, so 3 more pages and we're there. There we go. Okay. Eric, please guide us through.
Yeah, so operations reviewed the scope of the propane master plan. And the recommendations are contained herein. And so they recommend that we approve it as is with all the notes above.
Thanks. I just want to remind the board that there are 2 studies going on. One is a specific one that's almost completed, looking at whether storage can be added and what it would look like. And that's separate from this because that will be available probably shortly, right, Eric? Or
Yes.
at least, yeah, in the next month or two. So this is specifically looking at other aspects of propane and what we would put into a master plan and where we would put the focus of that. So Peter, do you want to comment on the operations committee comments, and then we'll open up to the board?
Well, our pretty much the consensus was to spend as little as possible, but there are things that we feel that we have to have verification on. And that's the continued safety of the system. Even though we'd like to phase propane out, that's realistically, that's going to be very difficult to do for some customers. So we need an interim minimum investment plan, basically. I think that was the consensus in the committee.
Yeah, I agree. Okay,
opening up for.
Go ahead, Doug.
Yeah, I was just going to comment that I think. Sorry, I think that's. I appreciate that, Peter, and that I think we do want to spend as little as we can to keep it operational for what's there. But I just want to make sure that we don't lose sight of. I think I know I've personally mentioned this a few times since January, especially of like, where are we going to slot in? A couple of things. Like one is that I frame this as two things. In the very short term, where are we going to? How and when, or in the next couple of months, are we going to be thinking about either how to price propane, how to sign contracts for demand response? How are we going to make sure that we don't have a situation that we ran into like we did in January or December, I guess it was, when we were really close to running out of propane. And in the longer term, on the fuel switching side, like this kind of comes up later in planning in terms of some things we've talked about, but I want to make sure that we're not losing sight of, like, this is the operational to keep it functional, but I don't want to lose sight of the long-term objectives and making sure that we're slotting those in the right places, especially coming up for this winter in the very short term. And then in the longer term, what are we doing?
Yeah, I agree with what's been said here. My main concern by Doug and by Peter, my main concern is I don't think we need to spend 100K on a master plan. I agree. Actually, the focus, and I think that's set somewhere here, is going to be capacity, safety, and there was one more thing. But these things doesn't. And yes, we should spend money on keeping our system running. But I don't think we need to spend 100K like it is budgeted for a propane master plan. In particular. Not including the scoping of the additional capacity through a tank.
So Eric, maybe you could comment on that. By limiting the scope, do you anticipate it's going to be less than that, than the original amount?
I don't know. There's almost no one that does propane master plans because nobody serves propane like we do, except for Unit 3 in Ferndale. That's the other one.
Is that right?
Or trailer parks. So trying to find someone to even work on our balancing issue, trying to find someone to, when we had to get an engineer for that, there's not a lot of people that deal with what we have. And so I'm not optimistic that the price will go down substantively, no.
Is it that different from natural gas? Okay.
Yeah, I just got back from a conference with a lot of natural gas people, and they were shocked that we're running LPG. So yeah, it's very different. Talking with their operators and their operations managers, it was interesting to hear how big the differences were.
Okay. They have to transport it either by pipeline or cryogenic tankers.
Yeah, well, yeah, they're getting a lot different way than we are. So
okay.
I think propane should be nurtured. I don't think spending 100K on a master plan is justified. That's basically my position.
Well, I think what we're proposing here is to make the scope as narrow as we can, and then seeing what bids are available, and then the bid would come back to the board for consideration.
Okay.
And Flores, her hand up.
Yeah.
Okay.
Just to clarify, because this scope that is in the board packet right now does talk about reviewing of potential expansion tanks, and expansion of the system. Is this the scope that you're asking of a consultant, or are we paring it down from what is in the packet right now?
No, the pre-design depending on what the answer comes back with and what the board decides, would be either incorporated or not incorporated into the master plan. So if the board gets the pre-design back and says we're not adding tankage, then it would not be in the master plan. If they get it back and say we're adding tankage, then it would be in the master.
So
On that subject, did you ever go back and look at
I
the
did.
board meeting and what did that say?
Because yep, it was reviewed at 3 different meetings and the direction was that I was to proceed with the pre-design only because the total design was 200,000. So
Could you share which meetings those were? at?
January, February, and April, I believe.
We did double check that, Fleur, so if you like, I can email you the dates.
That would be great. Thank you, Bob.
Okay, I'll do that after this meeting. And if we created confusion, I certainly wasn't intentional. Are there other questions on this specific scope of a propane master plan? not hearing any, yeah?
So my understanding at this stage is that we are going back to see how we can minimize the scope. Actually, it'd be great to have this pre-design. How much did you say it costs to get this pre-design?
The authorization amount was 20,000. But I have only been billed 2,500 so far and I have the draft, so I don't anticipate it's going up a lot more.
So I think we should minimize that because I think even yourself was doubtful on the feasibility to expand capacity with additional tank. The fact that we have new between quote because I'm not so new, but dual supplier on the Nevada side should improve dramatically our access to propane during difficult weather. And I'm sure that with being extremely vigilant, making sure that all our tanks are actually docked before storms, which nowadays we know when they come. All this together make me confident we will be in a better situation next year, and I would like to minimize any expenses toward additional capacity.
Well, at this point, we have the draft report, so we'll get a final one and then we'll review it.
Yes.
Okay.
And Flora's her hand up, Bob.
Yeah, just so that I'm clarify that this, a proposal with a proposed scope will come back to the board and community for review before it is approved based on this, or is that this giving the approval to move forward with a proposal once you receive one?
No, it's what you should expect, which is that there's a separate analysis of whether if it's possible or not to add capacity. That report will be reviewed by the board and the community, and then a decision will be made whether we want to actually get a complete plan to add capacity or not. This scope right here is specific to making sure that we have a reliable and safe delivery of the current system.
Right, but this one includes language for potential expansion. So I just want to make sure that we're not asking a consultant to do that work right now.
That's correct. We would only ask it if we approve the other.
Right.
So I would like to read the motion that was voted at the January meeting. Director Dunbrook made a motion to solicit a scope and a fee from a consultant from engineering and environmental work for the installation of a new propane tank roof and vaporizer roof, and bring that back to the next board meeting. And President Epstein seconded, and it carried with everyone voting for it. So the motion that we passed in January was to solicit a scope and a fee. So I don't see anything related to a pre-design expense. So it must be somewhere else.
Yeah, it occurred in subsequent meetings to
In the
that.
February meeting.
And that was my suggested motion. Yeah.
Okay, are there any other questions, or can we call for a vote?
A vote for what?
This is to approve the scope of the scope for a propane master plan.
This is what I'm going to ask an engineer to provide a proposal on.
Okay. So we are not approving the scope, but we are approving for having a scope.
We are approving this scope to tell this is what we want the engineer
Okay,
to
and
look
this
at.
scope does not include the tank extension.
It could or it could not, but there's a decision to be made by the board before that.
Okay. Otherwise, I agree with the various items that have been mentioned. I'm just very concerned about spending any money on an additional capacity.
Yeah, that would be a separate decision
Yes.
to happen in the future. Okay, so is there a motion to approve the narrow scope as identified by staff?
So moved, Dornbrook.
Okay, is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, Doug seconds.
All right, Epstein,
Aye.
Schroeder, absent, Mitteranda,
Aye.
Rowe.
Well, now I'm confused because if the scope is tied to 100K, then I'm opposing because I don't think that makes sense. So I think
Well,
there is a discrepancy here. So
This
I
is,
agree with the item, not with cost.
we would get a quote and then decide whether to proceed or not.
Okay.
This is
So-
just to define the scope and request a proposal.
So in that respect, I say yes. Aye.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so,
Dornbrook, aye.
okay. All right, thank you very much. So our next item then is item 9K. This is possible action to accept the electric master plan.
Yeah, so this was reviewed by operations, long time coming, glad we finally got it. Hopefully everybody's read the document, and operations and staff moves to or recommends adoption. And again, remind everyone, this is a master plan for capital improvements going forward and analyzing the system capacity. It's not about electric rates or rate structures. It's about a tool for replacing and expanding or abandoning infrastructure.
Okay, and this was also reviewed in operations. So Peter, do you want to comment?
Well, he goes into great length to express what he thinks are the limitations of our system are. And one of the things that he points out are the inability to run the Volvo generators. It's one of the biggest issues. The other is he recommends that he's comfortable with us expanding level 2 EV charging, but he has some concerns about level 3 charging. And I think outside of that, he makes some other recommendations in terms of replacing transformers and replacing in-valley distribution lines that were direct buried 50 years ago as being somewhat vulnerable. And I think that's the takeaway that I got from the report. I don't know, Bob.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, he identifies the fact that, as we expand, if demand goes beyond the peak of 3 megawatt, that we have a lot of capacity to manage it, that level 2 charging can pretty much go almost anywhere and can be encouraged. And the main thing about level 3 charging is that could create situations where if we're on backup generators, we might not be able to meet that peak demand if there's too much level 3 charging. So to the degree with which there are level 3 chargers, they have the ability to curtail or reduce the volume in situations where we can't meet it mostly due to the fact that we're on backup generators. It didn't seem likely we'd have a problem if out valley is running. And then that is the other point, is that the Volvo generators, as I remember back when the board approved those, they work extremely efficiently for small loads, like in summer loads. And when we didn't know whether we'd have an out valley or not, it made sense to be able to optimize for both cases. But now that doesn't happen, that it's a rare occurrence that we don't have out valley power, whether we want to continue to have those or whether we could surplus them is one of the things that might want to be examined in the future. So those were some of the main comments from the master plan.
I think he also assumes that Peddler Hill is gonna, Caltrans station at Peddler Hill will hook up.
Right. And that's a pretty low.
That's ever gonna happen.
Yeah, it's a small load. Yeah, that's true.
If they switch to level 3 charging, it may be not so small. So
that's true. That's true.
Mhm.
Yeah, our big demands would be a large shift, a large facility switching from propane to electric or level 3 charging, or maybe that new lift that's going to be announced soon, starting a rumor.
And just to be clear on Caltrans, they are not going to be able to exceed a certain load. So they won't be able to add level 3 charging there.
Yeah.
Because their load is restricted by contract. They're not a normal customer.
Yeah.
Right.
So that's a good thing, because actually it does actually impact the voltage of the whole thing. So because it's between the transformer.
It doesn't. It's so
You
tiny.
know, if it will
Yeah,
be
if it
a
was
big
big,
load, you know.
They have a step down transformer that
yeah.
they're going to be on the other side of.
And so anyway,
Yeah.
I don't know if it's my turn. Do you want to
Yeah, go
say
ahead.
more? Yeah.
Sure, go ahead.
Yeah, so I'm going to have my usual complaint at the beginning that I would like to have this kind of big, interesting document more than 2 days in advance. So we have the time to look at them. And so fortunately this time I was able to get them from the operation committee packet that I didn't get it, but I retrieved it and was able to start ahead, but still I'm not done. And I resent the fact that I'm going to ask my opinion until all I's have been dotted and all T's crossed. And that's the way I operate, and it allows me to find issues. And I did find a few of them actually right away. And I'm going, before I go there, I'm going to go back when we initiated that thing. It was actually coming from the planning committee. And when we start discussing that, is we are looking at ways to charge, how to change the electrical rate. That was at the time of the electrical rate study at the beginning of it. And one of the ideas was to look at capacity. And so to charge people based on the capacity, which would allow us to get more revenue from the big transformer, which actually I'm not 100%, 98% certain that they're actually part of our unidentified losses, because they are energized at full load 24/7, 365, while the resort is not using them on this level, because they don't run them almost during the summer. Even if they do run them, it's not loaded. And so here we are, and we could not go that route because we didn't know. I mean, I'm still actually not acknowledging that fact. The district doesn't know its connections to its customer connection. And I know we have, for sure, we have a billing ledger that we could look at. We have transformers that we could look at, and we also could look at the record that we have. And I know that there is a map that was actually generating at the time of mountain utilities that been passed along to the district when it was acquiring mountain utilities. Unfortunately, that map is absolutely out of date. Actually, I looked at it, and I estimate late 2000s when the last update has been put in this thing. So CCE or CEC is actually providing an Exhibit D page. Let me get there. Exhibit D, not here, not here. I would say it's page 167, for example, and where it shows which cabin is correlated to which transformer. But they are glaring omissions. I mean, some of them from mountain utilities. I mean, I know a specific cabin that is actually look unconnected, and for sure it does exist. And I know it does exist because that's where my daughter lives. So, and it's not even showing up. Lot 23, if you want to look at.
What page are you on?
That's page 167.
And here's a cabinet that should be on Fremont. It's not there.
Yeah, 23, that's Alflor's cabin. No, not 20.
Oh, last cabin?
No.
Oh, okay.
Lot, page 167. No, down. Okay, you are.
All right.
167.
And it's on Lost Cabin.
No, this came in. Lot 23, this is where Alflor lives. Sorry for doxing you, my daughter. It's not even connected. So my cabin appears to be connected. I can confirm that it is. And I was built about 20 years ago. But many cabins after that, those are built after that are not showing up connected at all. So I'm assuming that CC got a map from you guys and they just put their stamp on it and decided this was our inventory. So to me, this is incomplete work. So it needs to be, actually, my understanding and the scope of this engineering thing was, yes, our staff didn't have time to go transformer by transformer, but we were going to get an inventory of our connection, which seems to be the BAB of what our business is. We should know who actually, maybe there's some people that are not built properly, and we don't know because the map doesn't show they are connected. I know that for a fact that actually Vel had a transformer that was not metered. And a few years ago, we got it and we had them metered and pay actually some money back. To me, this is sloppy. That's basically how I see it. I think we need to have a map. We need to have a list of connection. We need to have a list of customers. And then you can use Excel to make sure everyone, you can use a VLOOKUP and function and make sure that all the dots are connected. And I think at this stage, it looks to me that the district is unable to do that. And I thought that was part of the scope of this analysis. I will add several items that are actually listed into that analysis, but I think deserve more time to think and look at it, and understand what they are before we can actually move on it. But we appreciate that part of the work that's done. The other thing that I'm not seeing, and I'm pretty sure, I would say like this time, 100% sure, that we had a discussion at the board meeting to ask to extend the scope to actually analyze losses. Again, the losses that trouble me, and we are not making progress on it year after year, that they will be also looking at losses or low-hanging fruit that we could start working on. In my opinion, the big meters that have power factors that are not actually, there is actually over that the operating committee point out that there was some meters that have unacceptable power factors, meaning that we have losses and meaning the district is paying for these losses. And all this needs to be addressed, actually. My understanding is most commercial rate from other utilities would charge something for people with unacceptable power factor. So again, that's not included in this analysis. And I think at this stage, this is incomplete. We need more time. I would like us to be able to sit on this document, digest it, analyze it, understand it before we can come to an approval of it.
Do you want to make the motion to defer on this?
I would like to, yes.
Brandy or Eric, can you, I guess there's two questions raised. One is whether there's missing items on the map. And then secondly, well, that was one question. Then the other was the question about whether the scope was expanded or not.
Well, I mean, on the map, there is no argumentation. I can give you lots of numbers, 79, 80, 55, 56, 35. Actually, I'm not surprised because it's actually a brand new thing, but there are plenty. And this is just on my neck of the wood, which I know very well, but I'm sure if it's the case here, something 143 is another one. 153, another one not showing connected. Do they have a meter? I mean, I'm asking, at this stage, I'm not sure we are actually billing the customers.
Yes, they have a meter. I would be happy to comment. So yes,
you, Brandy.
looking at the map, there are some things that are missing. When the technician from Cross Canyon was out here, what he was doing was at each transformer, he was opening up the transformer, determining how many services were off of each transformer, and then going out and comparing those to the meter numbers, which he documented at the time. What I don't see in the report is a spreadsheet of that, and that would be helpful here to get us updated all the way on the map. So that's certainly something that we can ask for.
147, 148, even more. I mean,
Okay,
20.
I just want to clarify that there's a spreadsheet that is more complete that's likely to be more complete than this map. So the map could be corrected. Is this map something that we have the source to, or is this something they generated?
This one that is on the screen is something that we provided the source to, including the different phasing. The subsequent maps in the report are generated from them, but we would have this also.
Okay, so we can update the map from the spreadsheet potentially.
That's correct.
Okay.
So the second question was a scope on the losses.
Yeah, when we expanded this from an EV only study, we expanded it to a master plan. I don't recall that there was a vote of the board to expand it to include losses. If you could document that to me, that'd be helpful.
Yeah,
and then I can ask.
As I said, I'm 100% sure we discussed that, and I didn't have the chance to search the videos for the time point, but if that's needed, I will. And again, it makes sense that we focus on our losses if we do a master plan, and I'd like to see that included, so we can make progress.
Howard has his hand up, Bob.
Okay, go ahead, Howard.
Yeah, there's another thing that's out of date in here, and that's the discussion on level 3 charging. In just the last few weeks, there's been a revolution in the United States with the North American charging standard taking hold, as Ford and GM and Mercedes and Volvo and other companies have joined in on what was Tesla only charging. So Tesla had, I guess, previously discussed with Kirkwood Resort on putting in superchargers over by the Kirkwood Inn. And so I had a meeting with Greg Kiskanen, who's the base operations manager for the resort. And he told me the reason they dropped it 3 years ago was because it was going to cost $450,000. Well, there's another development that's occurred, and that is that there's federal funding now for Tesla in getting this change from a Tesla only to a North American charging standard. It now opens up the new Tesla chargers to federal funding. So it's possible that Vail could get 100, 200, 300,000, who knows?
$1 million.
They could get all kinds of money from the federal government to put in charging. And the Kirkwood Inn is an absolutely ideal location, except that we only have single phase electricity over there. So it definitely requires an upgrade. But the other thing is Tesla is now the #1 producer of battery packs in the world, and they're producing batteries in Reno. And so at the Jackson Supercharger Station, when I was there a few days ago, they're installing one of their mega packs. Bob, you and I had talked about, eventually maybe replacing engines with storage. Well, instead of 774 kilowatts, as in this report, Tesla might be able to get away with 100 kilowatts or 200 kilowatts. So it wouldn't need to be interruptible. They could basically tailor the design. Also, their equipment will throttle down the use to whatever the available combination of power out of their own storage and out of the line. So there's no reason to make it interruptible. So I think that new information needs to go into this report. And so in that respect, it also needs to be revised.
So what would you recommend that we send the report back to Cross Canyon and ask them to address these topics?
I think we ought to first hear back from Greg Kiskanen at Vail Resorts and see what he's found out, because he was contacting Tesla immediately after I met.
No, but I think what Peter suggests is right. I think we should take the time to make a list of things that we'd like to see in this master plan. And once we've done that, send it back to CCE so they can complete this.
And what would they charge us for the additional?
Honestly,
Because
the
scope of the
suggestion,
report is.
the suggestion of remote switch interruption of a fast charging line is just actually, I would be embarrassed if I would be them to propose such a thing and not even mentioning the idea of requiring some capacity of storage at the location. To me, that's a shortcoming of what's actually in their analysis. So I would expect them to fix that without charging. Yes, and same thing for the map. If they put a map with their name on it, it has to be accurate.
By the way, the reason that they're adding storage at all these other superchargers that they have is they don't want to pay the demand charges that they're charged by PG&E and other utilities. And by putting in their own storage next to their chargers, they can have a smaller demand.
Exactly.
And pay less. So they'd rather take the power and it increases the reliability. So if the power line goes down, or if whatever situation occurs, they've got their own power to keep feeding the chargers, because reliability is a very big issue, especially at Jackson, where people going uphill don't have another place to charge until they get to State Line, Nevada.
As far as the load, actually, the study show actually one of the things I like in that documentation, that engineering studies, they describe that Tesla system they were planning to initially, that never went anywhere, is they only require 750 kilowatt load for 8 vehicles charging at the 8 empty vehicle charging at the same time, which statistically is impossible because people come and go. So the chance to have 8 people with empty big capacity battery plugging at the same time, and they were basically only having a 0.75 megawatt load, meaning that I don't really understand the fact that I was listening, I could not speak, but I was listening at the operation committee, and we were told that the level 3 would not be supported by our infrastructure, and because we would not be able to do another lift. That to me seems to be like misstatement. We have about 3 megawatt load max now in the last 5 years, and we have zero problem to go right away to 6.
So
and with modification we could go to 9. And so I just don't see the limitation. And I'm sorry, but I think Kirkwood need to be part of the future. At some point, we'll have fast charging. Yeah.
So that fast charging is its own topic. I'd like to put that aside and just stay on this specific topic. The point that was made in operations, maybe it wasn't clear, is that if we're on our own diesel backup, that would be the time when we wouldn't have that we have to be cognizant that when we're on diesel backup, we don't have the capacity we'd have otherwise. And that was the main comment. And so we just need to consider those things if we looked at something that was a high capacity demand. But I'd just like to put the charging issue that aside and just say for this particular document, for things that we might want to have clarified, just ask Brandy to just comment on what it might look like to just put together a list of specific items, but not expand the scope of the document and what that might look like. I don't know, Brandy, if you could comment based on what you've heard.
So it sounds like we need to go back to Cross Canyon Engineering and see if we can't get the actual spreadsheet document of the houses, each individual house meter that is connected to each transformer, and see if we can't get that updated on the map. So not only get the list, but make sure that the lot numbers are highlighted that are connected to each transformer. That should be able to be done.
Okay.
I totally second you on the fact we should get that spreadsheet in-house as well. I mean, we pay for it. KMPUD needs that spreadsheet because you can do a lot of things on a spreadsheet you cannot do on a map, except if you ask Bertrand to look at it.
Yeah, and okay. Brandy, please continue.
Other than that, all of the commentary on the fast charging, I agree, Bob. The issues are when we're on diesel. I mean, I'm not sure what we would ask for as far as grants available or, potential other incentives for someone to install the capacity across the highway that would be needed. That's certainly something we wouldn't oppose, but I'm not sure how we would get that into the master plan here.
Well, I think Howard's point is just that if Vail can be the lead on doing this, we would want to encourage that to happen. And nothing in what we know would prevent this from happening. And if there's a way to get federal support for it, that's great. So Howard, thank you for contacting them. That's great. I appreciate it.
So the last thing I'd like to us discuss is the losses thing. So can we extract more information in that report of the low-hanging fruit on losses? Where should we target? Which area should we target our effort to have the best impact on reducing our losses? I was really hoping to have that, and there is none of it. Yeah.
So Brandy, is that in scope or is that something they could comment on? What's your thoughts?
As far as I'm aware, that was not in the scope of this project. We could certainly, if it's the board direction, ask what that would look like as far as can they add to this study that's been done? Can it be a supplemental study?
I thought that was actually requested, but it may not have been. That's possible. And I will come up with the video and the.
Bertrand, I think the fact is that it's not included in this. So the question is, can they provide some comments based on what's already known? And if we need to add later, I would just propose that would be a new topic.
I can certainly ask if there's any comments they can make from what we've done so far, the work that they've done here. And if not, we could get an idea of what additional cost that would be.
Okay. Okay, is there any other comments on this? If not, I think we have a general sense and Brandy knows what to go back and request.
I
And
may
then
have another comment. I thought Howard was going to talk about that, the power factors. Do you want to say anything? I could jump in, but if you want to.
Well, that is in here, the fact that there's certain power factors that are out of spec. But as far as rates or anything else, that's a separate study to look at whether we would address that through rates or other corrective action. I mean, there's a number of things he identified along those lines.
Yeah, it's a good move, actually. Yes, I'm very pleased that this study went through, and it's a first step, and we need to complete it so we have accurate data.
Yeah, so I'd just like to encourage us to finish this before we do the next item and to be able to wrap this up with very specific items. It sounds like Brandy has a good handle on how to do that.
And Flora has a question, Bob.
Yeah, just
Okay.
a quick comment about the this appendix H that they provided appears to provide suggestions and recommendations on capital plans for upgrades of different systems within the electrical system. And so it would seem that in order to provide these recommendations, they should have looked at the system and areas where there is losses happening. And would hope that whatever they find would also inform their recommendations on this capital plan that they have in here.
Okay, thank you.
Another comment I would like to add, actually, learning from this document is the district should ASAP look into surplusing our Volvo generators. I don't know about replacing, but we can't use them at peak load anyway, and they serve no purpose, actually. And there may be a market at this stage, but the later we wait, the less value they will have. And it's clearly been identified into the thing, and that's something the district should move aggressively on that, in my opinion.
So once we know what's going to happen with snow removal, we'll be bringing back a surplus list, and the Volvos will be on there for the board to discuss.
Yes, thank you. As I said, it's a good first step, but we need to make it cleaner before and more complete before we can say it's done.
Okay.
Yeah. So I've got very good information into the package, but not complete. Yeah.
Okay. So we're ready to move on to the next item then. So item L, not I. So the fiscal year GM goals and objectives. So this came from personnel. It's on page 181. One page further, Eric.
On page 181, Bob.
You are?
Yeah. Showing up.
Oh, sorry. Sorry, I wasn't. My bad. Two windows, two problems. So just a little bit of background on this. One of the observations, and this really was driven a lot by John and his background and all of his companies, is the number one goal always needs to be a safely reliable delivered service. And when all of the GM's objectives were on specific tasks, then we weren't really capturing the service levels. So the proposal that was developed, and I think it was discussed at one other board meeting, that going forward that we consider changing the way we do this to the items in here, that a third of the goals related to meeting and exceeding service levels for each service. A third of it be tied to the operational margin, which is to keep our costs in line. 10% on communications, and then 30% be on the specific goals established for each year. And the goal there, which, not to be redundant, that we started last year, was to not have a long list, but to identify really no more than 5 goals that would fit in the long term or in the short term. And so I wanted to propose that we think about moving along this line And if we want to do that, then I would ask board members to think about specific GM objectives, item 4 there, and then we would accumulate those from everybody, synthesize them, and then at the next board meeting bring back that fleshed out for board discussion to see which ones we would include or exclude. So I'm really soliciting board opinion on just the overall strategy of doing this way, and then collecting them, and then having this a proposal to be refined at the next board meeting. Let me open it up for comment.
My comment, and actually understand it's just the first overview and concept. I will add concept level here, not that fine granularity. I had zero chance to read that in advance. I think it goes in the right direction, and since it's only for next board meeting, I will spend time looking at that. I do agree with the general principle. I think I understand, but I think actually almost say, I'm sorry this was not retroactive, because it would have impacted the general manager assessment if we had used this goal system for last year.
Yeah, well, this is forward-looking, and it's correct. We would like to gather people's comments. We'll assign a staff member to collect them, and then we'd use a personnel committee meeting to consolidate and then present the not make any decisions, but consolidate the ideas back for the next board meeting. That would be the way we'd proceed. And I'd like to suggest maybe if people could do that, in the next 2 weeks, we would then target a personnel committee meeting to consolidate the ideas.
Sounds like a plan.
Doug, Peter, any comments?
Nothing additional, thanks.
No.
Okay. Are there any audience comments? Okay, so that's where we are on that. We're now ready to move on to the needs assessment, which is item M.
So we got the draft of the methodology for the needs assessment. I went through planning with some suggestions. There's been a little more information Doug or Ann Floor can add to on the median income. But we recommend that we ask the consultant to proceed with these changes.
And I can just chime in
yeah, please, Doug.
Yeah, Ann Floor volunteered, and appreciate her time that she spent looking into how to maybe potentially nail down a little bit more closely between the planning committee had thought between 120% of the median income, and by looking at other similar utilities. And I think the email conversation that we had seems, there's a lot that could be done here. At the end of the day, we're going to have to figure out what it does demean low income for Kirkwood. And I think given where we are today, to be able to move forward, I think moving forward with 100% of median is a good place to start. And we can always come back and revisit this as we have more information available. But thank you again to Ann Floor for taking the time to dig into it. There's a lot to look in there. So she asked brought up some interesting questions that I think we can continue to consider as we look forward.
Okay, other comments from other board members?
I think the staff report covered perfectly the topic, and I agree with the recommendations.
Okay.
So did you want to proceed at 100 or 120? Just
My
for their
recommendation
initial?
is my recommendation for if I would motion for it would be 100%.
Then we can adjust it later
Correct.
in subsequent surveys, right?
That's correct.
Yeah.
Okay, are there comments from the audience?
And here.
Okay, so Doug, would you like to make a motion then?
Sure, I'll motion as written with the clarification that it be set to 100% of median income on the second bullet point.
Okay, is there
I second.
Okay, Bertrand seconds. Is there any other discussion? If not, we'll do a roll call vote.
Epstein,
Aye.
Schroeder absent, Ittiranda,
Aye.
Perot,
Aye.
Zerber, aye.
Okay, so before we move on to item 9, does anybody need a 5-minute break, or should we just power on through?
Power through.
Power through.
Yeah.
Unanimous? Okay, sounds fine. All right, then we'll move on to item N, which is considering ordinance 23-01 to establish an appeals for the AMU calculations.
We made the recommended changes. There's still a couple questions to resolve by the board. So one is the fee to recover district staff time, and the other is use of the word unique or distinct.
Okay, Doug, as committee chair, do you want to comment?
Sure. I think the red lines in here identify the further conversation that we had, and as Eric said, I think the sentiment is that the appeal fee, we have a fee of $300 to petition in the first place, and then the subsequent is $150 as we were to further appeal to the board if the general manager did not approve it. And some of the committee members were feeling that the $150 on the appeal was something that we should consider eliminating or reducing. And so I think that's something that we should discuss, as Eric outlined. And the terminology here, it was the intent behind it is just to be as clear as possible. And district council chose unique, and I think distinct was, and again, in an effort to try to be clear in terms of what we are allowing for. But we can discuss as a committee or as a board what we want to do with that.
Okay, thanks. And Bertrand, do you want to add?
On same long, I think unique is could be misinterpreted. I probably not what the lawyer meant. Distinct, in our opinion, that the planning committee was achieving what the goal without being as stringent, because how can you make sure something is unique? It's just yeah. So that's one. And yes, on the appeal fee, I think I'm fine with the petition fee actually, and I think we need to discourage frivolous thing, but I think we owe due process to everyone by having the opportunity to have built in the petition fee an appeal to the board.
Okay, let me open it up. The rest of the Peter, do you have any comments?
No.
Okay.
The only thing I would say, Bob, on the appeal fee, the only reason Josh broke it out in my discussions with him is because not everyone's going to appeal. So if you put the additional staff time for appeals into the initial petition fee, people are paying more than they need to. That's why he broke it out separately. And just recoup staff time. That's all it is.
Okay. Are there comments from the audience, online or in person?
In here.
Okay. Well, why don't we start with so we just have to decide on those two things, and otherwise the rest is ready to go. So Doug, do you have a suggestion?
Actually, I can make a move to accept the ordinance with the various modification included, and see if there is a second that would simplify.
Okay, so go ahead and so what specifically, what are you motioning?
So the motion would be to approve the amended ordinance, the change to the ordinance, and as proposed in the packet.
So does that mean the appeal fee is eliminated and the word distinct is used, or?
That's what it, I'm looking at the changes here. No, actually, where is this unique thing?
It's in D1, and the concept was that it is the customer must
Okay.
present a unique
So-
demonstrable or quantifiable circumstances or
Okay.
a distinct
Okay.
demonstrable or quantifiable circumstance.
So yes, so the reason we have not included that inside the addendum or change is because we are unsure of the necessity to consult with the lawyer about it and if there was cost associated with it.
Sarah, can you
So,
comment?
I'll give you an example. So if someone install a heat pump and that impacts significantly their AMU, this is not a unique thing. It's a distinct event, but it's not unique, and it's demonstrable, it's quantifiable, and the way I read this thing, it would preclude all people installing heat pump because it's not unique to actually being able to petition for a revision of the rate.
I mean, I think let's have the discussion then. I mean, I think you could say the same as it being distinct. Is it distinct that I don't know, is that distinct? Is it distinct? Are they distinct in the, I don't know. This gets into the language and I just don't know. This is where I was like, I don't know. This is half dozen, 1/6 another to me. If I defer in some ways to what a lawyer says, because I'd imagine if there were an issue with this and we said, this is what the lawyer gave us as terminology, that's better than we changed a word. And now it opens us up to more nuance potentially. I don't know. Maybe, is that true? Eric, I guess you can comment. Maybe, I don't know.
So
Well,
one thing I may add, I think we had discussed as well the idea to have a Q&A form attached to it to explain, for example, if you
That's
are
right.
installing a heat pump, you can apply, would actually resolve this ambiguity, and maybe that's the way to go.
That's right.
That probably is clear. I mean, the test is whether we can ask the general manager if somebody did a heat pump, would they think that qualified?
Oh, you're actually asking me that question. Sorry, Bob.
Yes, yeah.
So the way I perceived this all came out of that weird circumstance where someone did construction in the winter and decided to paint and drywall in the winter and ran heaters and fans, and while their AMU was being set. I understood the electrification incentive as a separate topic from this one. That
Yeah,
has
we
yet
have
to be dealt with.
Yeah, the standard AMU discount was the second one. So that's what, yes,
Right,
that
so
was
that would be under
my
the standard AMU. So to answer your question, would installing a heat pump under this ordinance? No. It would be under the standard AMU change ordinance when we get to that.
Okay.
So now I'm lost.
So Bertrand, this was the intent of this particular, so the example you gave, I don't want to go into detail, but I'm glad we've had a customer, and I'm sure this will happen again, where, something out of their control. It's like, if they had a water leak or something like that, equivalent for water, if something was left on and they can show that it was left on or whatever, and their AMU gets crushed by 3 months of high electricity as an accident, but it's not related to their typical use. The intent of this was to provide a mechanism for the general manager and staff to be able to hear someone's concerns and be able to potentially change their AMU, which will get set after those 3 years indefinitely. The standard AMU discounts was more of a encourage electrification via your first 3 years, because right now there's no incentive to do that, right? Because you want to use as few kilowatt hours as possible, essentially, that's the incentive that we've given people, but we'd like to see them be able to do that. And so the standard AMU discounts would be if you install energy efficient appliances, if you switch from, do fuel switching, things like that. And we had, in a previous planning committee meeting, we had outlined the types of circumstances in which people could qualify under that as a fuel switching mechanism. I can pull them up if I can do that quickly, but it was like, I remember we had eliminated some circumstances in some situations because we didn't think that was appropriate, but that was the intent between the two different ordinances and mechanisms that we've been discussing. Are you confused, Jill? Does that make sense?
Yeah,
So I answer after. Yeah.
This ordinance is, if using the air source heat pump example, if you are an all electric, heating your house with all electric, and you replace your electric heater with an air source heat pump, and you reduce your electrical consumption significantly, you could apply for this.
No, you would go under the standard.
The standard AMU.
So if you're getting rid of,
I thought we had combined them into
no,
one.
we kept them separate because if someone wanted to get rid of baseboard heaters and go to a heat pump, that was one thing. Someone wanted to get rid of a propane electric heater or a water heater and go to an electric water heater. That was one. To get rid of propane heating system to go to HVAC, that would be the standard. Because it's like, oh, you're doing this. This is how much we offer a discount, and it would be a set AMU reduction.
Okay, so this ordinance is only for unique circumstances, and we haven't reviewed one yet for general electrical reduction.
Correct.
Changes. But
Absolutely
I thought we had
correct.
decided to combine those into one.
No, we had them separate. They're on the planning.
No.
So
Yeah.
It's on the backlog. I mean, and Flora, in the notes in this packet, right? It's literally like on the list of things. And I'm looking it up. It was on, and this is part of the issue is I think we just staff has not had, frankly, the time to look at these things. And I'm looking at our notes from July 20th, 2022. And we talked about the criteria and the structure where
it won't be finished by the end of this.
Please let Doug finish. Go ahead, Doug.
I was just going to say that I think we have, we put in some recommendations, like this is only applicable that don't have a fixed AMU, but have an all electric dwelling, like things like that. We talked about these different programs and how the different ways that this come. And we've had this conversation, but it was a year ago, almost to the date. And I think we all probably don't remember it perfectly, but that's what the notes say. And that's what we talked about. And the intent of this specific thing in a lot of ways came from a customer that came forward to the board and presented to the board, probably about a year ago at this point, saying this was their circumstance. And I'm sure that this is something, and our staff had no way to remediate that situation, even though it seemed like a viable and fair concern. And so we were trying to find a way of helping our customers be able to have a mechanism to be able to come forward with any concerns during their AMU first 3 years.
So given the narrow nature of this, the word unique to me seems to make sense.
Yeah, I don't think when we discussed this in the planning committee, we had discussed that this was for all of those situations. Yes. And that is why we felt we should change the word to distinct and not unique. We talked through this ad nauseum because we had been talking about this as applying for all of these reduced electrical usage situations and not for the specific only unique situation, which is why we had talked about changing the language there.
Yeah.
So I guess I'm totally confused because it's not at all the discussion that we had in our planning committee meeting. That's completely not what we talked about.
I agree, and I'm going to add something else. Actually, the way we structure that is by actually not to be too precise in purpose, so people cannot play games, and have a first obstacle through the general manager, where people first need to pay for $300 application. Then the general manager is going to assess the validity of this thing, and then if it's denied or not, if it just go forward because the general manager thinks this is it, but if it's denied, then the board can look at a specific situation. And once we've done that, I don't see the need to be too parsimonious in that. We should use that vehicle for any significant reduction that people have versus the AMU period. And I thought we talk about these things. So I think we're getting back here one step. Yeah.
No, Bertrand, I think, I'm looking, I am going to, I'm looking back at my notes now. And again, it's been a year. So I think I misstated. I think you're right, Anne Fleur and Bertrand, that we did try to combine this. In my mind, I thought we had combined two other things But I think you're right. It is the AMU discount because we did have a discussion about this where we're saying it gets so specific and it was getting hard. We had a meeting where we said, I remember we talked about it was so hard to find the specifics of the certain circumstances, and this could be the catch-all for those things.
What I recall as well. And I recall that this ordinance was for all of them, which is why the
Right.
word unique didn't work, because it has to meet all of those criteria. And a lot of these situations are not going to be unique. In fact, we turned in circles around trying to find a word, and it was at the very last minute that we came up with the word distinct as a good replacement for that. And I believe Rick said that he would take that back to the lawyer to see if that was an appropriate replacement. I don't know if we've heard back from that or if this says that basically that's okay. But that is what my recollection was and why we thought it was important to make that change.
Okay,
Yeah.
so Doug or Eric, can we move forward? It seems like we have a consensus. Do you have a specific recommendation? So we can resolve this and move on.
Yeah, I mean, I think the first, yes. I think the fee side of it, I think, is the other part of this, Bob, which is, you know, I think Bertrand, if I'm speaking on your behalf, you had said something to the effect of, you don't think it should be much work to include this in a board packet. So that was, I think, your point, is that you don't think it should be $150 worth of staff's time. You were questioning the amount of time it took to recover it, or it was my recollection, as opposed to you don't think we should recover staff's time. Am I remembering your?
I think staff time for scheduling an appeal is minimum, because the work is going to be done by the board. And it's going to be an isolated event, because I don't think there'll be too many frivolous requests with the $300 appeal fee, not appeal fee, application fee. So, I think I like the gesture, so people know they can always come to the board if they feel they are wrong in some ways. And I think that and I don't think it's going to happen anyway, but
Well,
I would disagree. I think it would always happen. It would always happen. Everyone would appeal if it was free. I disagree.
yeah. And right now we're not a board of appeals, and I'm not anxious to turn into one. It has to be a fairly unique situation. So having some barrier somehow, and if this is staff's estimate of what it's likely to cost, it's
okay.
not unreasonable.
If you need a barrier, in this case, I would like the language, if the appeal is won, then the fee will be eliminated.
So it's just like baseball.
Yeah. I'd be fine with that.
You teach me something.
Okay, Doug, do you want to make a motion then?
Yeah, I would motion that that we can use the word distinct in here. And then also the appeal fee would be rewarded back if the appeal was won.
And otherwise, everything as trademark.
Yes.
I second.
All right, any further discussion? Epstein,
Aye.
Schroeder absent. Rhonda?
Aye.
Rowe?
Aye.
Robert, aye.
Okay, that's the ordinance. I'm ready to move on to item 10, major projects updates.
There's really everything is going along per schedule. So unless there's any questions, there's really no change from last time.
Are there questions? I'm just glancing at it. Yeah, I agree. Okay, good. Then let's move on to the general manager's report.
Not a whole lot to report. We've covered everything that's been occupying our time. I would note that I'm very pleased to send Brandy to the Energy Executive course and attend the summit as well. And a lot of good information, a lot of interesting information out on cybersecurity coming out that was, quite frankly, terrifying. The proxy war, But let me just say this, a very smart man who used to be Department of Energy counterintelligence director said that we will be in a kinetic war with China by 27, but by 25, they will start attacking our infrastructure. And cyber attacks, they've already started attacking our allies in Europe as test cases. And it's absolutely frightening. They're masking themselves as Russians. It's really, really interesting. There's a lot of great information. His name's Charles Durant. If you are on LinkedIn, strongly recommend you follow him. He has a lot of good information on there, but a lot of good takeaways, a lot of stuff talked about. As I told Peter, talked about, liquid propane versus natural gas and complete differences there. Got a lot of good information from that. But all in all, it was a good thing. And Brandy is now a energy executive graduate and did a great job and made some good contacts. So other than that, I really don't have anything else to report that we didn't cover.
Okay. Thanks. Other questions on the board? If not, Rick, can we get an update on operations report?
Sure. 3 notable items for the last month. Number one, as you may have heard, we had a transformer issue over at Sentinels West. We replaced the transformer, and it also failed. And so within the last 2-3 days, we were able to actually find a brand new transformer and install it and restore the service without having to take down or open up the residential feed. So essentially, we're able to replace the transformer without disrupting the community, the power. So nice job to the electric propane staff and Brandy for making sure that got done. And we also purchased a second transformer as a reserve, residential style transformer as a reserve. So again, they did a nice job with that. The playground has been installed. There is still a small pile of snow there, but it's up and running, and staff will continue to clean the area up. I noticed that the tennis courts, which we are not responsible for, were getting swept today as well. So again, just another nice thing for the community to enjoy this summer. And then finally, third item is the Kirkwood Summer Festival. Very grateful for the community support and showing up on January 1st. And we are still doing the financials, so I can't give you a good recap of how we did. But again, I just want to appreciate the community and the KVFD volunteers for putting on a really nice event. And so that's my report, unless there's any questions from the board.
Rick, I was asked if we had an estimate of how many people attended.
I was surprised. I was going to say 325, but after doing the books with volunteers, we were at 495. So 495 people enjoyed the event, which is very similar numbers to last year.
Right. Great. Are there questions for Rick? Okay, then let's go through the standing committees. Doug, on finance?
I think we've covered everything from finance today.
Okay. And planning?
I think we've covered everything from planning as well. And I'll just say that one of the things in the notes of it's in the board packet is talking about the future topics to come up. It's a good time with the fiscal year turning over to think about this, I think. And per your note earlier on general manager objectives, we can kind of loop that into that conversation potentially and go from there.
Okay, great. Peter, operations?
I think we covered it all.
Okay, and communications?
Communications did not meet.
Okay, personnel, we've covered everything. Okay, temporary advisory committees. Eric, remind me if we have anything there.
We don't have any right now, no.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Okay, then a general discussion, opportunity for board members to ask clarifying questions or cover.
Bob, did you want to report on LAFCO since you actually have something to report?
Sure. So LAFCO didn't meet, and Taylor commented that she just didn't have any staff until recently, so she hadn't been able to do anything. So that's been that's been held off. Eventually, we'll need to update our report to LEFCO, and as the other special districts will need to. And she hasn't told us yet. I don't know if you've heard anything, Doug, of when that we'll actually schedule the next meeting.
I haven't, but I think the timeline, just as like I mean, from a staff perspective, I think it was 60 days was the intent of whenever
Right.
we get notified, it will be about 60 days. So I think just from a staff perspective, we should start budgeting time, if not getting ahead of that, and know that it's going to come. So if we have some time this summer, then that would be a good time to get that work done, so that's not going to be a burden at another time.
That's true.
We were notified last week, and they're giving us till September 15th, I believe. So
Okay.
at Bob's nudging, they actually sent it out to everyone.
There you
Oh,
go.
all right. Oh, good. I didn't know that. I don't know if Terry Woodrow's line, if she has anything she wants to add to that. And I'm going to assume that she doesn't, unless she wants to. Here, give her a second, too. Okay, and then general discussion. If any board members want to bring any items for
Yeah,
consideration for the future.
I would just say that from the conversation before on the gas fund, I think I voted for it. I think it's still the right thing to do for this year, but I do think the comments that were made are important, and I understand them. And I want to make sure that we do think about this as a board. And do we just raise compensation? Do we have a cost of living adjustment for everyone? Do we think about how to encourage people to live here in other ways that we haven't been doing? I think those are all important things that we should be thinking about as soon as we can, and have the time and space to do that in some committee, wherever that lives. And I'll just reiterate what I said before on the propane and the fuel switching, and I think the needs for that in terms of the short term. I think I'm getting nervous that it's July and we're going to have a winter coming soon, and I don't know that we have a plan in place for, in the very short term, how we're going to contractually or otherwise be able to make sure that we don't run out of propane like we almost did a couple of times in the last winter. And then obviously the longer term needs of fuel switching, and that's noted in the planning committee report as well, as potentially a place for that.
Okay, thanks, Doug.
Yeah, I would like to add a comment on the fire KBFD future. I think since Measure E failed, and we should try to move aggressively on alternative solutions, and probably the best way to jumpstart this process would be to start an ad hoc temporary committee involving firefighters, community members, and I have a few names. I'd be happy to volunteer for that. So we don't waste any time, because we still have a situation to deal with for the fire department. And so we need to act moving at ASAP on this project. So my recommendation will be that a temporary ad hoc committee be created for that specific topic. So I would also include Val in this discussion indeed. So that's basically one of the things I wanted to add. Another thing I'd like to have is some kind of report from staff on the irrigation volumes and general account. One of my concerns, actually, when I start thinking deep, first we are supposed to put some kind of a discount program on that. We never did. But actually, when I think about it, the only thing we do with this irrigation account is that we have a separate meter, so we don't charge wastewater on irrigation rate on irrigation, but it's the same line and everything. So in effect, we are double dipping by charging a base fee on this irrigation account, because people already pay a base fee. I'm assuming we don't have account irrigation without water. Right? If that's the case, then we would still have to get a base fee there. But I think we need to revisit that, and I'd like that to be coming back at some future board meeting.
Okay. Okay. Anything else, Peter?
No.
Okay. Well, I think then we're ready to adjourn at at 4:30. I thank everybody for working through a lot of topics in a very efficient way, with maybe one moment that was a bit too exciting, but that happens. So with that, I'd like to adjourn the meeting and thank you all for your time.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.